There are people every day making decisions about the future of public education. Listening projects, summits, conferences of groups and organizations committed to educational justice have revealed real tensions or hotspots that lay unresolved and limit our ability to unite around more potent narratives. Each episode in this series shares potential public narratives that might resolve these hotspots while explaining and unpacking the historical context and choices that lay behind it.
School is, I think that we got so caught up in school being a tradition that we stopped using it as a learning tool, which it should be. But school is really important, reading, writing, arithmetic. But I think after you learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, that's it. But what they tend to do is teach you reading, writing, and arithmetic, then teach you reading and writing and arithmetic again, then again, just making it harder and harder, just so, to keep you busy. And that's where I think they messed up.
As a teacher, I've seen students' eyes light up when what they're learning connects to their own experiences and their identity.
Schools should be the incubators for the development of the next generation of leaders.
I want my children, as well as all children, to experience learning that is relevant to their life.
I think the relevance to life frame is really important, especially in light of the increasing diversity of our student body and our society. In the past, it's always been wrong to insist that all students learn one group's way of thinking, doing, performing their knowledge. But especially now that that group is no longer even in the majority, it really just doesn't make any sense in any way to continue to insist on that as the goal of educational achievement, to be as culturally white as possible. That's not a valid goal on any front now. We really need to, I think, rally behind a frame that helps us advocate for something that's going to, both be relevant to students right now, because we need to remember that students are people who are worthwhile right now, not just in the future, but also that is going to actually prepare them for what the real world looks like in the future as well as now.
Yeah, in many ways, the way schools have been structured, and I think that we have enough evidence here of at least 120, even 150 years of evidence. Schools were not necessarily structured for the edification of the self. Schools were not necessarily structured to have children and adolescents find themselves in the larger sort of trajectory of life. Schools were created really for an industrial kind of base. Schools were created to create a certain kind of order in society. And so while that may have had utility at some point in history, the greatest part of the utility really at any time in history would have been to create a teaching and learning process where children could find themselves, could find their voice, could find their place both in history and as a move toward the future. And learning theory teaches us that. And so I don't think that that's really a question anymore. We know better. As we create the schools of the future, we really should have the self at the center of it, the understanding of the self in a way that is appropriate, in a way that is relevant, and that is in a way that is culturally appropriate, socially appropriate, geographically appropriate, and relevant to each of those things.
Relevance to life frame is super important when we're thinking about freedom and the freedom that education allows us as citizens and the freedom to be who our communities need us to be and who the world needs us to be versus what the world has told us that it needs us to be and wants us to assimilate to. One of the greatest examples I think about is being a citizen of Mississippi. And 50 years after the civil rights movement, we still being trained and educated in our schools as if though we're going to go out to the fields and pick cotton and be sharecroppers. And education hasn't changed. It hasn't even assimilated itself to who we are and who this country and who this state is right now. And so I think the only way that we can get around assimilation is to really put forth a hard push around education for liberation, and to really understand what liberation means and pursue those values and those principles within the way that we educate and learn.
Ultimately, we want to know, do these narratives advance your own efforts?